What is up, everyone? It's Quinn here, and in today's video, I'm going to be going through some buy low trade targets heading into week 6 of the NFL season. I feel like 5 weeks in here, we're going to be in a spot where some teams are starting to panic. If you have underperforming players and they're sitting there, their record is 0-5, 1-4, 2-3, they're not feeling great about their current roster. This is a time where they may start to panic. They're going to sell low on some players that maybe haven't lived up to expectations. And I think this is where you can swoop in and get some nice values here. So maybe these guys have been underwhelming to start off the season. Maybe they've been underwhelming over the past few weeks, but I think these guys can turn it around and be solid contributors moving forward. If you guys enjoy the video, smash that like button, subscribe. I've already posted the waiver wire video, so check that out if you guys are interested. But let's just dive right into my first buy low player here, and it is going to be Devon Anan. And we saw him go out week 5, leave early on with a concussion, and there's no way around it. Like the last 3 weeks, Devon Anan has been awful for fantasy. Week 3, 8.8 PPR points. Week 4, 5.9 PPR points. And then week 5, leaves early, but I'm assuming most people started him. He's leaving you with 2.7 PPR points in your fantasy football lineup. And Anan has gone from pretty much one of the most efficient seasons ever in 2023 to pretty much being bottom of the barrel in efficiency through 5 games. It's honestly like the most stark contrast I think you could ever find. Like literally last year, yards per carry amazing, by far the best rushing yards over expected per attempt. Now you shift over to 2024, he is by far the worst in rushing yards over expected per attempt. It doesn't make a ton of sense. And based on that, I have to assume that Anan has been kind of playing through this ankle injury that he suffered a few weeks ago. It just doesn't make any sense to me how someone can be so ultra efficient one year and then just completely tank heading, into year 2. And this is not a spot where it's like just because 2 is out, because even week 1, week 2, when 2 is healthy, the efficiency was still not there from a guy like Devon Anan. So the Dolphins have a week 6 bye, which I think is very, very important, gives Anan some time to heal up, both the ankle, but then also recovering from the concussion he suffered. And then after that week 6 bye, you have one more game until you get Tua back in the lineup. He has missed 3 weeks so far. You just need the week 7 game where he's going to be out. And then it seems like he's going to be back good to go for week 8 moving forward. And we can't forget what we saw out of Anan week 1, week 2 with Tua in the lineup. Put up 23 and 29.5 PPR points. His usage was very solid. Even in week 1 with Mostert out there active, Anan was still the guy getting the goal line carries. So the usage early on was super strong. The workload was there. Obviously, this offense is going to be operating at a completely different level with Tua back. I think Anan should still probably be considered a running back 1 rest of season. And I still think he has that upside to be a top 5 guy, from like week 7 on, especially once we're getting Tua back. Week 8, I would not give up on Devon Anan. I don't think you can go out, be one of the most efficient running backs pretty much of all time as a rookie in year 1, and then all of a sudden he's just going to completely tank in year 2. I do expect him to turn it around here, and I think he is a nice buy low candidate. Now the next player here, pretty much the exact same argument. It's Jaylen Waddle. And just like Anan, Jaylen Waddle has completely sucked without Tua in the lineup. Week 3, 6.6 PPR points. Week 4, 7.6 PPR points. And then week 5, I guess he's improving, 8.6 PPR points, but under 9 PPR points in 3 straight games. That is not getting it done in your starting lineup. I assume you did not start him in week 5 just because, he had been such a rough option. But I don't think it's unreasonable to expect Jaylen Waddle to bounce back in as like a top 24 wide receiver from week 8 on with Tua back in the quarterback position. We've seen when Tua is in there, even with the target competition with Tyreek Hill, Jaylen Waddle is productive. Wide receiver 12 in points per game in 2022. He was the wide receiver 21 in points per game last year while battling injuries. And it's very possible at this point, like the Jaylen Waddle owner is just done with him. If they're about to be 0-5, 1-4, 2-3, they can't deal with, him having the bye week in week 6 and then having another Tua-less week in week 7. Like they need to win now. They need to get this dude off of their roster. I would definitely be willing to buy low on Jaylen Waddle. I just think with these Dolphins weapons, it's such a unique situation where typically, right, if you have the starting quarterback in there, you're going to be given, the production that you'd expect. And then if the starter goes down and it's a backup, their production falls off, but typically like these solid options, like a Jaylen Waddle drafted as a wide receiver 2, Achan drafted as a running back 1, with a backup, these guys aren't going to become completely irrelevant for fantasy. But that's really just what we've seen with this Tua situation here with the Dolphins. Even Tyreek Hill, like he was fine in week 5, but he's been pretty awful also. Obviously, we know Tyreek Hill is an absolute stud. So it's just something weird about this Dolphins offense that they cannot operate without Tua. And so I just have to assume these guys are going to bounce right back to what we saw. Like early in the season, they were still producing. I think Jaylen Waddle maybe had one down game, their week 1 or week 2. But like, I think they're all going to bounce back. And I just think it's this weird contrast of like, they've been so exceptionally bad that maybe people don't think they're going to bounce back to the same heights that we saw with Tua healthy and what we've seen over the past couple of years. Now, obviously, there's some risk, right? Because Tua, obviously, he's had the concussion issues, and you know that if he goes down with anything, these guys are pretty much irrelevant, but I think that risk is kind of baked into their current price and how they're being valued. Now, my next buy low trade target after those Dolphins weapons is going to be Trey McBride. And I just think that in a year where the tight end position has been so rough, if you're able to go out and buy low on one of the few high upside options, that's a move that could end up being a league winner for you. Last week, I talked about Brock Bowers as someone who I thought was a buy low. Obviously, he went out week 5, had a big game. This week, Trey McBride is going to be my guy here heading into week 6. On the season, in the 4 games he's played in, he's averaging 10.9 PPR points per game, but he is currently tied for the lead in targets per game at the tight end position with 7.5. I believe he's tied with George Kittle and Jake Ferguson, and he hasn't necessarily hit in the touchdown department. He scored 1 touchdown in 4 games, so it's not like he's been shut out. I will say it was like not even a receiving touchdown. It was like he recovered a fumble for a touchdown, but obviously it counts just the same. So he's not like hitting big time in the touchdown department. He is still a top 2 target on this Cardinals offense, and he's actually leading the team in targets per game at this point. I do think Marvin Harrison Jr. will overtake him at some point, but like I said, he's commanding volume at a high level. I do think this offense is going to be trending up rest of season. Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison Jr.'s chemistry should improve, which I think is just going to raise the ceiling of this entire group. So this is just a spot where I feel like you can trade for a proven talented tight end. We saw last year that once he took over as the starter, he was giving you 15 PPR points per game. He was the tight end 1 over the second half of the season. And so I just think if you can buy low on him here, like I said, in a year where Travis Kelce's kind of fallen flat, maybe he picks it up with the Rashee Rice injury. You have George Kittle who's playing well, Dalton Kincaid kind of fallen flat, Kyle Pitts fallen flat. Trey McBride is kind of, not necessarily lived up to his ADP, but he's been fine. I think he's someone who definitely could explode moving forward. Forgot to mention Mark Andrews, who has just completely flopped here. So if someone's viewing Trey McBride as someone who's just like in the pack here, like the gross kind of top half of the tight end position, I think he's someone that I'd go out and I would try to bring in. And then my final buy low player is going to be Tank Dell. And I was very high on Tank Dell heading into the season. Admittedly, that has been a massive whiff through the first 5 games here. I will say, though, his early season usage has actually been better than I anticipated. So I felt like the struggle for Tank Dell would be like, is he going to be able to work his way into 2 wide receiver sets? Are they going to run enough 3 wide receiver sets that he's going to be relevant right out of the gate? The problem is the production just has not been there. So even though he's getting the routes, the production has just not followed here for Tank Dell. I think at this point, obviously you're not breaking the bank to trade for Tank Dell, but I feel like some people might be considering like straight up dropping him or selling him for pretty much like next to nothing. He's averaging 7.4 PPR points per game in 4 games. And this is just a spot where at his current price, his current value, I just have to take a swing on a young player on a good offense who has already proven himself to be very talented. Last season, Tank Dell averaged 15 PPR points per game as a rookie. That includes 2 games where he left early with injury, and then also a couple of games before he broke out as an established full-time starter. He actually outproduced Nico Collins last year in the healthy games that they played together. So I just cannot accept that this dude is not going to be a factor throughout the rest of the season. This is going to be a good offense. It's a good passing attack. You already have Nico Collins, who left with a hamstring injury. Maybe Tank Dell now gets a game or two operating as like a top 2 wide receiver. But I'm someone who always talks about when these young guys break out, you want to believe them, you want to buy into them. I don't think Tank Dell is just going to like disappear into nothingness throughout the rest of the season. Now, I guess the question is like, is he going to be consistent enough where you actually want to play him? And who knows, that's still up in the air. But I feel like worst case scenario at this point, he's like a wide receiver handcuff where if Nico Collins is missing time, Diggs is missing time, then he's someone you can, throw in with a lot more confidence. But I still just think like he was so good as a rookie. I know they added Stephon Diggs, but this offense can support 3 weapons. I truly do believe that. So Tank Dell, obviously, like I said, you're not giving up a ton to get him because the production hasn't been there. But if you can get him for close to free with the production he showed as a rookie on a good offense with CJ Stroud, I feel like you just have to take like the minor swing. And like I said, you're not giving up a ton. So it's not like you're risking a ton of assets to bring him in here. So Tank Dell, still like him moving forward. Obviously, this is not me like rationalizing my draft pick heading into the year. Like he has not panned out. It's unlikely he pans out on where I had him ranked, but yesterday's price is not today's price. The price you had to pay to draft him is not the price that you would have to pay to trade for him here heading into week 6. So those are going to be my 4 buy low players. We have the 2 Dolphins guys, Devon Anan, Jaylen Waddle, and we have Trey McBride and Tank Dell here. So thank you all for stopping by. Any questions, drop them down below, and I will see you guys in the next one.